Hey guys, my name is Roberta Peel, again, owner and artist at Oregon Trail Metal Stamps. We're going to talk about making a simple silver band today. Alright, we're going to keep this as short as possible, so I'm going to go over materials as we go. First thing that we're going to need, this is 8 gauge half round sterling silver wire. Okay. It's got flat on the bottom, it's domed on the top. I found that it's kind of perfect, that this particular shape is kind of perfect for making bands. You can make them as small as you want to. Just remember that the smaller that you make them, the less stable that they'll be as far as keeping that nice round shape. This is half round. I want to say this is dead soft. Okay, you want to try and get your wire dead soft anytime you're working with anything. Alright, so one of the biggest problems that people have, there's actually two problems when they're making sterling silver bands, is number one is getting the ends to meet, and number two, getting the length right. I mean, really, you might have to fiddle with the length if you're doing it my way, or unless you've gotten a different suggestion, hey, happy to hear it. Alright, so the first thing I'm always going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clip one end down, because you'll notice that whenever you, and you can use a saw too, if you want to like cut down on your filing time or just make it easier for you, it's totally fine. But if you're going to use a pair of cutters, you know, then you'll notice that it's going to go ahead and pinch the ends off. That's how these things actually work, is that they actually pinch the metal until it just shears right through. So, I've noticed that if I do it one way, that one side becomes a little bit more flush. So, you know, I'll put the wire in on this side and then cut it, and it kind of makes it a little bit more flush. Alright, so now here is my nifty little trick for making your actual rings and getting them down to size. So we're just going to go ahead and bend this down as far as we can get it. There we go. Alright, so first thing that I've gotten here, this is just one of those ring sizers, okay? It's like maybe 99 cents. You may have found them for $2. You know, you can buy them in bulk, and the idea behind these is so that you can actually send them out to customers, and they can close it up and they can get their ring size for whatever size ring that they're trying to make, for whatever size ring you're trying to make for them. And they're inexpensive, so you know, the idea is to let the customers keep them or send them back or whatever. Using them as shows is a great idea. Keep in mind that these are not true sizes, that these are, by true sizes I mean every single brand of ring sizer that you have is it's gonna come up with a different size. So if you start with something, you want to stick with it, and I started with this and I've stuck with it. So you want to make sure that it's going to go up over your knuckle when you get your size. Okay, see? Nope, okay. Alright, so this right here, and I already know my thumb size, is a size 9. Alright, so basically, my little idea here is I know that from here all the way down to the size 9 is going to be the length that I need for my ring to be. Okay? There's a lot of different ways to do this. There really is no actual wrong way, as long as your results are, you've accomplished the results that you're setting out to do. Alright, so little nylon hammer, and I've got a fine tip Sharpie. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra room because I still have to file the ends down. So what I'm going to do, zoom in a little bit farther. That's the wrong direction, silly. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the very top of it up and go down and mark on the number 9 where I want it to go. Make sure you've got it marked at the right spot. Okay. Now, again, on this thicker gauge wire, it's better to use like a saw to put it on a bench vise and use a saw to saw it down. But, you know, because this is a little bit quicker, all I'm going to do is just cut, but I'm going to cut it just slightly longer, and I'll show you. Make sure it's as straight as you can get it, because that'll cut down your filing time. Alright, so we get this out of the way. So, as you can see, right here is my mark, that top one, not the bottom one, but right there is my mark, and I gave it just a little bit of extra room, okay? Because when you form it, it's going to stretch a little bit. You know, it's just kind of something that's going to happen, but you want to get it as close to that size as possible, and then try not to fiddle with your metal too much, as little as possible while you're working on this. Alright, so next, there's a couple different files. You know, I've got this nice little three-sided Swiss number 4 that I really love using. Some people like using the bigger ones. This one's a file from Weimar. It came in a set. I use them regularly. They're great. Again, just a nice fine cut, whatever you prefer to use. I have a bench vise if that helps you. You know, you can always like, no, well, I won't show you. But you can always like put it in a bench vise, but really I just prefer to use the little one. Whatever you're comfortable with. And we're going to file it down just so that it's flat. And then I'm going to show you how to get over the second obstacle, which is getting the ends to meet. And it's actually a lot easier than you would think. Alright, so that access that I had on there, which really wasn't very much, is going to get balanced out by my filing. Alright, so I don't need to worry about whether or not this end is going to perfectly meet up with this end right here in a loop. Because, ow, cat's playing with my hair. Because I'm going to show you how to bypass that. Alright, so now I'm going to do the same thing with the other side and try and get it as flush as I possibly can, which is why when you cut it, you want to get it as flush as you can as well. And again, you can use something to hold on to this. You can use a ring vise to hold on to it while you file. You can use I've got a big bench vise with a piece of rawhide clamped in the jaws. That works really well too. But really the idea is just to make sure that you've got it both flush and flat. Okay, so I'm going to double check my size. Make sure it's still pretty close. If it turns out to be just a hair too long, then, you know, just file it down. And from the looks of it, I might have just nailed that one. Alright, so now the second part to this, I've got a couple different ring mandrels. We're just going to use this one right here. It's your standard metal ring mandrel. And I use metal anytime I'm working on a ring. I don't buy the plastic ones. I'll always buy the metal ones, aluminum, steel. It doesn't matter because this isn't gonna misshape itself. My cat is just going nuts over here. All right, so I know that it's going to be a size 9. Also with the plastic, it tends to dip. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it around. Now at this point, all I'm trying to do is just get the two ends to meet. I don't really care too terribly much about the shape. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it up a little bit on my mandrel because I'm going to have to close this in a different way. And then just hammer the ends down. And now it's slightly circular. Real easy. And then I got to get my nylon top pliers because I forgot to grab them. There we go. So here's the trick to getting these things closed. Alright, what you're going to find is that you can fiddle with this and try and get it as perfectly round as you possibly can until you turn blue in the face. And if you manage it inside of a day, I would be very surprised. I mean, unless you've had a lot of practice doing this. This is a much quicker, much easier way. So as you can see, because the ends are flat and because the ring itself is supposed to be curved, you're going to find that you're going to have a difficult time actually getting this these ends to meet up in a perfectly circular manner, okay? But now the reason why I file them flush while it's straight is because I'm going to take my nylon jaw hammers and I'm actually going to bend my ring into kind of a D. And this is also where like forming jump rings and stuff comes into, or closing jump rings and stuff will come into play. So I'm going to form it into kind of a D, try and get it fairly straight on the top. And I do rock out to Kenny Wayne Shepherd while I work, so you know, if you don't like it, that's okay. Put on your own music. Alright, so I'm going to get it down to kind of a D shape. Alright, now the next thing I'm going to do, anytime you want to close a ring, whether it's a jump ring or this kind of a ring, it doesn't really matter. You always want to, and you can maneuver it any way you want to, you just have to make sure that you pull it over, or pull it out like this, and then push it in. Pop it out a little bit, and what that's going to do is when you push it in, it's going to go ahead and cause some tension, so the ring itself will close. Okay? And we're going to go back and forth until we get it fairly flush. And double check and make sure that your seams are touching. And if they're not, like I can still see a slight gap on the top, not a problem. Because you don't actually form your ring until you're done soldering it. So you can form it into this nice little D shape, and then after I do that again, I'm going to have to maneuver it. But you just kind of keep going back and forth, make sure that there's tension on it. Make sure that your ends are, that it's flush from the top to the bottom. Now if it turns out to where like one side is slightly higher than the other, you saw how I went back and pushed it in and then went back in and went back and forth until it was, and that'll also harden your ring, so don't, you know, it'll give it a lot of tension, a little bit of springiness. Anyhow, but if you have the issue where like one side is up higher than the other, then all you have to do is just do the exact opposite. Instead of going side to side, just go up and like take your ring and go up and down until you can get it flush, okay? So here's this one right here. Now the next step is going to be to flux and solder. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. I understand that some people like using paste solder. That is not ideal for these, and the reason why is because paste solder, it spreads too thin and it won't give you a good solid solder. Alright, so what I use is just, I have some pallions. You can use wire that you can cut pieces of wire. This, at this point, this is at your discretion how you want to solder this. I know that some people will take a ring, and like I had done with this one, this was a couple weeks ago. What you can do is you can take your ring and flux it, and then set your ring down on top of your chip, and that'll work just fine. Actually, it works friggin' great. But what I like to do is to prop it up like this, and then I'll flux it and I'll heat it up, and then I'll set my my pallion or my chip down after the flux has turned white, after it's finished turning white and clear and bubbling. Anyhow, then I'll pick solder it and I'll set it on. But at this point in time, it's completely up to your discretion. So I'm going to do this my way. Hopefully if you're watching this, you already know how to solder, so it's the actual soldering part's not going to be a huge deal, which is why we're doing it this way. Another thing that I want you to keep in mind as well is anytime you're heating up your ring to solder, if you are fairly new to this, you know, you've soldered a few things together and you know, you're really having fun with it, you always want to keep your seam on the opposite end of you. Okay, so my seam is always going to be facing away from me. Alright, or in this case, because it's in that nice little D shape, and all this is just a kiln block, you don't need to use this. You can always like prop it up some other ways. People use titanium clips, not a big deal. But I'll either keep it away from me, like on the opposite side of me, or I'll keep it on the bottom. Alright, so now what we're going to do, this is the part where I go over a couple other tools. Alright, so this is a Handy Flux. It's okay. It works really, really well. It dries out really, really fast. So you have to like put some water in it every now and then and shake it up. And then it gets all crusty and all that, but you know what? It actually works pretty well. So we're going to flux this up a little bit. Now I always make sure that I don't get any flux on the other side, okay? Because when it spreads, it's going to spread down. Oops, sorry. It's going to spread down through the seam anyways. So I try not to get any flux on the other side, because all that'll do, your flux is going to be your medium for your solder. So all it's going to do if you put the flux on the very, very bottom is it will basically spread the solder down around to the side. You'll just have more cleanup to do. Alright, and this is kind of unconventional. I'm not going to use a little butane torch because, not going to lie, I kind of hate them. I'm actually going to use a MAP gas torch, and I'm going to make sure everything that's flammable is out of my way. Anything I don't want ruined. And the reason why I use the MAP gas is because I've been doing this for a while, and for me it's quicker, and I've done it so much that I can actually control the flame. It's not something that I recommend for everybody. So I'm going to grab my plumber's torch. Alright, so let's go ahead and get you guys zoomed in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. Now, whether you're using, oh here, this is my MAP gas torch, okay? It's kind of a beast. I prefer to use acetylene, but my acetylene setup is on the other side of the room. And this is where I do all my videoing. So, alright, so what you're going to find, whether you're using your MAP gas, propane, butane, acetylene, air, oxyacetylene, oxy-air, whatever it is that you're using as a torch, you always want to make sure that the blue tip of your flame itself does not touch your silver. Okay, you want to keep it just off your silver. And I always start off a little bit farther away. Okay, yeah, I've already got my thing on there. But I always start off a little bit farther away because I don't want to heat my metal up really, really quickly. Okay, I don't want to heat it all up at once. I just kind of want to get it to uniform heat. All right, and that's why I prefer to use my MAP gas torch, just because I can do that quicker. Now I already have my solder. This is hard solder sitting down here. And again, I pick solder. I'm a huge fan for pick soldering. I'm slightly ambidextrous, so I usually torch with my right and pick with my left, but you know, it's up to you guys. Or again, you can just lay your ring down after you've got it fluxed and then put your solder down right here directly underneath it on the bottom of it, and I found that that works because when you solder it, the heat itself is going to draw the solder, suck it up right through that crack. Okay, so that's okay too. It's totally at your discretion at this point. All I'm trying to do is show you guys how to get your joins closed and then how to reform your ring when you're done and get the size. Alright, so we're going to fire this up. Maybe. And this one's the striker's kind of going out on it, so. When I use my MAP gas, I keep the flame fairly low. You know, every now and then I'll turn it up a little bit. So I'm going to start off kind of farther away. Always start at the very top or at the exact opposite side of your seam. Otherwise you're going to find that you have a lot of trouble. And again, I like pick soldering. Love pick soldering. Okay, and as soon as the flux actually bubbles and turns clear, you notice I'm really only heating the top. I'm not going too far down. So once it turns clear, there we go. I'm going to set my solder down on the seam. So just kind of go around back and forth, keep the whole thing up. Get your solder to flow nicely. And that's it. One and done. Never actually quench your metal right away, especially if it's a thicker piece. It can actually cause a lot more problems. It can cause it to crack. This way you're also kind of annealing it in a way. So it's going to become softer and easier to work with. So as you can see, and I'll let it cool off for a second, it's got that nice ugly gray color that us silversmiths just love from the oxidation on it from burning away all that copper. Alright, so we'll let it cool down for a second, quench it in some water. Easy peasy. And she's done. Now at this point what you're going to want to do, is pickle it so that when you can check your seam and make sure that the solder flowed all the way through. And I'm slightly worried that it didn't this time, so I'm going to cheat. Don't do this unless you've been doing this for a while. I'm going to reflux it and then I'm going to resolder it. It didn't look like it flowed all the way through. There's still a little bit on top. So let's play around with it again. Get everything kind of blended away. I kind of like it when I do something in a video and it doesn't quite turn out all that well, because I can show you guys how to work around that. And again, I'm only using the MAP gas because it's just faster than butane, even though butane is probably going to be better for you. Oh, and you notice once it gets that nice red color, I'm going to back my torch off quite a bit. Because if you don't back your torch off, you'll melt your silver. And that is not what we're trying to accomplish today. Alright, that looks like it flowed a little bit better. Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, so again, I kind of like it when I mess up on a video and I get a chance to actually show you guys how to fix it if you have that issue. That way you don't have to start all over again. Let that air cool for just a second. Quench it off, and at this point you're going to want to pickle it, but just because of time, I'm not going to. And you really want to though, because your flux and all the crap on the outside of it, if you go to do what I'm about to do, it's actually going to cause you more problems. So, but all I want to do is show you guys how to actually get the shape. Now, I really don't like making really hugely long videos, so we're going to skip that. We're going to grab our nylon hammer, put your ring on your mandrel, and just reform your ring. Just get it good and tight. Now, it's always best to have a ring that turns out to be too big versus too small, because you can actually go back through and saw it off at the seam, or snip it off at the seam, and redo it. So this right here might be a size too big, which is okay because it'll actually fit on my other hand. But again, too big is better than too small because you can always size it down much easier. Alright, and then you've got, oops, right there in the seam, kind of needs a little extra attention. Oh, and you notice how I flip this over on the mandrel? It's because your mandrel is tapered and you kind of want both ends to be as even as possible. All I do is just roll it around on the table a little bit. But you kind of get the idea, right? Okay, so you're going to have a nice round ring at the end, okay? And actually, that fits pretty nicely. Slides over my knuckle really well. Anyhow, so that's how I'll size it for myself. Again, if I did it like a size 9, I might like it better because it could fit on my middle finger. This is probably a 9 3/4, so I could probably just put it in my vise or in a ring clamp or something like that. Saw it off at the seam and then file it down a little bit more and then go through, redo the D thing, resolder it. It's not really a big deal. So anyhow, I really hope you guys found that somewhat informative. Hey, close up with my DV shirt. This is really basic. Okay, it takes some serious practice. Just doing it all at once. I kind of whipped right through it. I kind of skipped a few not really a few steps, but I just kind of flew right through them. But the idea behind this tutorial is to show you how to get your right size, how to get it soldered so that your ends are flush. Alright, and what you're going to want to do again is just make sure that you get your length correct. Give yourself a little bit of extra length because it can't hurt if you have to go through and resolder it. Excuse me. And do the D thing. The D thing is going to be your saving grace. Just put it back on your mandrel and reform it. Oops. So I hope you guys found that somewhat useful. We've got some sales going on at OregonTrailSilver.com. Check us out. We always have sales going on. Sometimes I'll do an entire collection. Sometimes I'll do just a couple stamps at once, some higher end ones, and drop the prices down for you a little bit. But if you guys need anything more, let me know. Hope you all enjoy your week. Take care.